I'm excited to welcome our next speaker, Rick De La Torre. He's CEO of Tower Strategies and a retired CIA operations, which means I have no idea if Rick De La Torre is his real name. But over 25 years of intelligence, diplomacy, and global operations experience with a focus on Latin America, including being chief of station in Caracas, Venezuela. Please join me in welcoming Rick De La Torre to the stage. Take off the shirt or something, right? Yeah, take that off. Got me in pictures.
Thank you. All right. Good morning. I want to thank just about everyone here who I've known. Special thanks, obviously, to FIU, the Jack D. Gordon Institute, President Nunez, and everyone who made this conference possible, and a very strong salute to my Miami Sunset Senior High classmate and a great United States Marine, Dr. Brian Fonseca. I don't think when we were in high school we ever thought Brian would be a Dr. Fonseca, but here we are. So we here believe this forum matters because it brings together people who are accountable for outcomes, not just commentary, not theory, outcomes. And that's rare. And it's necessary, especially in the Western Hemisphere. It also matters that we are here in Miami. I grew up here. I'm a graduate of FIU. My family fled communism in Cuba. I grew up just down the street around people who lost everything to a failed system and rebuilt their lives here. In Miami, we say, si pasa en La Habana, se siente en Miami. And that's not just about Cuba. It reflects the interconnected reality of this entire hemisphere. Miami is not a slogan, it's a result. And to the leaders here from Latin America, thank you for being here. You chose to be part of a conversation focused on sovereignty, security, and execution. That is not trivial. Today, I want to share what I see from my vantage point in Washington, D.C., and from my experience as a former CIA station chief, and what that means for the future of our hemisphere. And I'll keep this simple. At some point, conferences like this one, and too often there are few real outcomes. The takeaways feel too hard, too costly, or too complex to act on. So let me try to change that. Because whether we like it or not, much of what shapes the security of our hemisphere still runs through Washington, D.C. And that's where I spend most of my time every day. So that means policy, capital, sanctions, access, and timing. Washington is not abstract. It is a system that rewards alignment and exposes drift. Right now, that system has shifted. Under the Trump administration, the Western Hemisphere is being treated as contested space. Not background, not an afterthought, but contested. We see it in border security being treated as national security, in supply chains being deliberately rebuilt, and in the recognition that we are in direct competition with our adversaries, and in particular, the communist-controlled People's Republic of China. That last point is where many governments need to be more candid about what it actually means to them. China is not here to help you. China does not care if your country develops. China is establishing a strategic presence inside your country. Over the last decade, Chinese state-backed entities have expanded across this region with discipline. The headlines focus on trade, but the real story is control. Control over your ports, control over your logistics, control over your energy infrastructure, control over your data networks. Put these pieces together, and you don't get partnership. What you get is leverage. Look at Peru's port of Chanquay. Majority Chinese ownership, built as a direct Pacific gateway. That project dramatically reshapes how trade moves across South America. It shifts routes, dependency, and power. Across the region, Chinese-linked firms are already embedded in dozens of ports. Not visiting, embedded. Then add telecommunications. When a foreign power builds your core networks, it gains visibility into your country's data, your systems, and your vulnerabilities. That is a generational decision. And when governments push back, the response comes fast. We saw it this year in Panama, as President Mulino moved to unwind Chinese-linked control around canal infrastructure. China responded with pressure, economic pressure, diplomatic pressure, targeted friction where it hurts. That's how China's leverage works. Quiet when you comply, but very loud when you don't. Now, here's the part that doesn't get said out loud enough, I think. Governments in this hemisphere are not passive victims. They sign these deals. They agree to the terms. They approve the financing. And they defend those arrangements once they're in place. Dependency is not imposed. It's agreed to. And that leads to the real dilemma. Many governments want the security partnership of the United States, but then want the capital flows of communist China. At some point, you have to decide which system you're actually operating in. Because those two tracks do not run in parallel forever. They converge. And when they do, the decision will be made for you. Now look at the other side. The United States recently brought together more than a dozen countries in this hemisphere to coordinate against transnational criminal networks. Real-time intelligence sharing, joint enforcement, coordinated pressure applied to real targets. That is operational cooperation. Washington is engaged, but it is not interested in supporting countries that won't help themselves. From where I sit, leading Tower Strategy, I can tell you exactly how this works. When governments show up in Washington with clarity and discipline, the system moves. Doors open. Agencies engage. Capital flows. When governments hedge or try to play both sides, they lose leverage quickly. Because contradictions get exposed. You cannot balance security alignment while building strategic dependence somewhere else. You cannot talk about sovereignty while outsourcing control of your infrastructure. That tension always resolves. And this is where we operate at Tower Strategy. We work with governments and companies to navigate Washington and as it actually functions. And what that means is aligning national priorities and private sector interests with US policy, building leverage across the interagencies and Congress, and turning access into decisions, capital, and partnerships that hold under pressure. At Tower Strategy, we've assembled a team that understands Latin America, the way it actually operates, and Washington, the way it actually works. Former operators, former US and foreign ambassadors, senior practitioners, people who have run missions and embassies, not studied them. There are plenty of firms that promise access. Every senior partner averages over 3 decades of real government experience, not a couple years as a political appointee or congressional staffer. We convert that into outcomes. That's the difference we do. Before I touch on Venezuela today, let me give you a quick window into how these systems that I've been talking about actually operate on the ground in Latin America. So when I was chief of station Caracas, you didn't see a vacuum of authority. What you saw was something far more dangerous. The regime didn't lose control, it outsourced it, and it manipulated it. I remember sitting with a local contact who explained very calmly how things worked in his neighborhood. He told me, if I have a problem, I don't go to the police. I go to the colectivos. They decide what happens. And those colectivos weren't separate from the system. They were part of it. They were connected to security elements, tied into political structures, and operating with the regime's full awareness. That's what corruption at scale looks like. The state didn't disappear, it was repurposed. Now look at Venezuela today. What happened there recently was not symbolic. The United States acted decisively. Maduro is gone and facing justice here in the United States, and that sent a message across the entire hemisphere and the world. But removing a leader does not remove a system. The networks remain. The security apparatus remains. The incentives remain. Power didn't disappear, it shifted. And that is the lesson. Moments like that create opportunities. They do not guarantee outcomes. If governance does not follow enforcement, the same system comes back, but just under a different name. We've seen that before. But right now, there's a real opportunity in this hemisphere. An opportunity to see the end of Marxist and communist governance within our lifetime. That is not a slogan. It is a window. And windows close. Opportunities end. We may not see another chance like this in our lifetimes. The United States is signaling that it is ready to lead, but it cannot impose the outcome. That will be decided by the leaders here today. So if you're serious about sovereignty, start with 3 things. Audit your critical infrastructure for control, not contracts, but control. Map your data architecture. Know who can see what's inside your systems. Align your security partnerships with your economic decisions. If those move in opposite directions, you already have a problem. From where I sit, the difference between countries that stabilize and those that drift comes down to alignment. Policy with enforcement, economics with security, and words with actions. That is where outcomes are decided. So here's the standard. Stop recycling socialist and Marxist systems that have already failed. Enforce your laws and stand behind the people doing it. Be honest about external actors, especially China, and what they are doing inside your systems. Choose partners that strengthen your position over time, and focus on results. Sovereignty is not declared, it is maintained and enforced. At Tower Strategy, we help you align your internal frameworks in a way that creates leverage and delivers outcomes that hold under pressure. If we get this right, our hemisphere will be stronger. If we don't, China or someone else will shape the outcome for us. Miami did not become the gateway to the Americas by accident. People made choices. Those choices compounded. The same will be true for every country represented here. That is the bar. So let's meet it. Thank you. I'll be around if anyone would like to chat or have any questions.